No, the Chaim. Hey Teves. Chaim. Chaim. Zohar, shining. We're very, very lucky. We're very fortunate to be in this generation. And there are a lot of challenges, but we're empowered with the ability to be able to elevate the whole situation. That's what being Olam Haza is about, is elevating the whole situation. Dira b'tachtonim, it's called. It means that every single area in a person's life. In the story of Hey Teves, the best way to know about Hey Teves is to learn the sichos of the Rebbe. In the subsequent years, the Rebbe was mezaka us with a specific action. And so a specific action was to buy a sefer or to repair a sefer for Hey Teves. And it reminds us b'maaseh b'poel, everyone should do something like that. Hey Teves, so the day is close to it. Buy for yourself, for a library, for your family. Get a sefer. I see it something like the minhagim of Hanukkah, let's say. But behind that minhag, behind the takana of the Chachamim, and behind the minhagei Yisrael, there's a deep, deep idea that Hanedes Halalu, Chayomim La'olam, that these lights are eternal. And that's the message that we take from Hanukkah. Hanukkah is dafke. It's dafke when it's dark. Dafke the time of Golus. It's interesting because the whole Hanukkah, it commemorates the miracle which had to do with the menorah. The menorah was perfect. The full menorah was lit every single day. That's what the mitzvah in the Beis Hamikdash. So you come and you make a takana, and the takana is not exactly like the menorah. It's a different number to start with, and it's a different sequence. And the Rebbe explains in many places that that's the whole idea of Hanukkah, is telling us that it's even a higher oil, which is coming in a time of darkness, and a time of challenge, a time which you don't expect, and a time which you didn't want, and a time you didn't anticipate, and a time which you really would have avoided for anything, and there was a challenge there, and it happens in every person's personal life, and it happens in Klal Yisrael life, and through that, there becomes a renewal which makes everything stronger than it ever was. That's what Chanukah is. It's Moshe v'Hoilech. And the way I understand, the story of Hey Teves is the story of the Nitzchias, of the Nesias of the Rebbe. And the Rebbe mentioned it in as many words. It's talking about the fact that the concept of Rebbe, number one, even when you don't see, it's there. And it's there in a more powerful, a more active, a more real way than it ever was before, even if you don't see, on the one hand. And on the other hand, it permeates, it permeates in every single aspect, because it was the way it expressed itself. The Rebbe spoke in the Sichos that the possessions of a Rebbe are imbued with a certain kedusha. Whatever the possession was, some of those possessions were not things you would even learn in, some of those books. But it was the Rebbe's possession, it was there for a reason, and it was imbued with it. And as I understand it, it's talking about a generation which is dark, because we don't see the light, and really there's a deeper light that's there because it's expressed in that particular way that it imbues everything with that kedusha. Now we had just to say a Dvar Torah, we read in the Sedra 2 or 3 weeks ago about Yaakov Avinu and how he found himself alone on one side of the river, and everybody else was on the other side. Vayivoseh Yaakov levadoi, Yaakov remained alone. So the question is, why was he alone? He was with his family the whole time. He was with a team. He was with a group. He was with 2 camps. Why was he alone? So Rashi tells us from the Chazal that he went back because he left something behind. What did he leave behind? Pachim Ketanim, little jugs he left behind. So it's written that the machloikis in the Sikha, the argument, the milchama with that malach, with that angel who represents Esav, was about the Pachim Ketanim. Are they relevant or not? Because the battle between good and evil is a lot easier to win. It's not easy, but easier. Or it's easier to recognize at least where the sides are. Sometimes there's a side, this is good, and this is evil. And then I have to fight with my Yetzer Hara, but I know where I'm going and where I'm supposed to be going and what I'm supposed to be doing and how I'm supposed to get there, and it's a relatively easy battle. The battle with Esav was on whether small little things in life are relevant or not. Whether there's such a thing as Pachim Ketanim, which really do make a difference. Because what did Yaakov have to go back for Pachim Ketanim? Go get another couple of Pachim. It wasn't just, it was Pachim Ketanim. With little things. So why did he have to go and get back these old Pachim, used, second hand? And forgot it. What Yaakov was saying there is that there's nothing in life that is irrelevant. That I was given certain possessions. In this case, it was the Pachim Ketanim. And there's a reason that Hashem wants me to utilize that for Kedusha. In Kabbalah and in Chassidus, this is called Avodas HaBirurin. The refinement that every single object in the world has a koyach halaki, has a divine force which keeps it in existence, but that divine force is concealed. And when you take a physical thing which is allowed to be used, and you use it for a holy purpose, you are releasing that energy, those sparks that are there from B'riyas Ha'olam, and you are redeeming that object. So that it gives you a completely different perspective in, first of all, mitzvahs maisis. Somebody once asked me, how's the Jewish religion? Well, somebody, he just found out he was Jewish. It was his last months of life. It's a whole story. A musician in England. It's a fascinating story. Maybe much later if somebody wants to tell you the details. But his friend called me up and said, this guy is in the hospital. He's a leader. He was a charismatic figure. He had like a following, hundreds of people. Only 2 of them were Jews. One of those Jews called me up and said, please come put on tefillin with this man. And I went a couple of days later. I met this man 3 times before he passed away. He was 41 years old. But when I went into the hospital room the first time, he was a musician. And also many, many other things he did. He was sitting on a chair by the window and he had his bass guitar on the side. And I walked in, and I said, and this was Yud Zayin Sivan, about 4 years ago. He found out, I think, Yud Aleph, he found out within a week before that he's Jewish. What happened was, I'll tell you the story. It's very interesting story. What Neshamas. There was a couple who lived in Vienna in the 1930s. And they saw what was happening, and they decided to escape with their 10-year-old daughter. Jewish couple. And they went to Brazil. And this daughter was brought up in Brazil, and subsequently she went to England, and she got married to a non-Jewish Indian person, and they had a son. And the one parent died when this son was an infant, and the other one died when he was maybe 9 years old or something like that. So the law, what do you do? Okay, he's Yosim. Yosim, he had nothing, nobody. So what the court does is they arrange for him a foster home, which was somewhere in the north of England, a city with, no Jewish. He wouldn't have known anyway he was Jewish. And he was brought up, he was an intelligent guy and a talented person. And then he got Yenamachla, became very ill. And they tried they had 3 possible courses of treatment. 2 had already failed. And the third one was the third choice because it only had a 20% chance of succeeding. But one of the things they were talking about was the marrow transplant. So they had to find out about his family. And to see if there were any matches. And they didn't know his family. Because the law is that they went to a lawyer. The lawyer keeps the documents until the person reaches the age of 20. When the person reaches the age of 20, the lawyer is supposed to give these documents back to that person. But nobody gave him any documents. He didn't know any law. Maybe the lawyer died, or maybe it was just hidden in a basement in this big law firm somewhere in London. And he was very sick, so they searched it out. It was by a miracle, that they found this box of documents, and it was given to him. So here was Sivan Tov Shin Ayin Hey. It's 4 years ago. And they were sitting in the hospital there with a bunch of friends, and the documents that were there were in Portuguese because he was from Brazil, and they didn't know, nobody knew Portuguese. And just then, the knock on the door. It's another Hashgacha Pratis. A non-Jewish guy from Portugal was one of that circle. They had a circle around the whole world. He had people, followers, and friends. And they said, "Could I read the document?" So he starts reading the document, and then he reads this thing, and he says, "Hey, according to this thing, your mother is Jewish." And they all burst out laughing. It's like the furthest thing they would ever think of this man. And by the way, as Levaya, over 100 people came. It was a mess. We were able to get a Levaya for him anyway, but only 2 were Jewish. We thought like a minion. Only 2 were Jewish of the whole circle. And so they had a laugh. And then this Jewish guy, Mike, who the one who called me up, says to him, "By the way, you know what it means?" He said, "What does it mean?" "It means you are Jewish." And they all burst out laughing because his 2 closest friends were Jewish. His landlord was a Satma, a Haredi Jew. A kesher with but he was the first thing you ever heard. So this guy calls me up a few days later and says, "You got to do something." I said, "Are you Jewish, by the way?" The guy called me up. I said, yeah, well. Okay. So and he came. I asked him to put on tefillin. This guy who's working on mitzvah tefillin says, I haven't done it since I'm 13. I'm not doing. He came to my office to take me to the hospital, and the security wouldn't phone up to my office. Are you expecting the guy? They came up to my office. I asked the security guy, why'd you come up to the office? He says, it doesn't look like the normal people to come to see you. You know, it's two people with long hair, with earrings, with ponytails, mices. Anyway, two guys. Anyway, so I get to the hospital. He says that the guy's down. He's just been given a week to live or something. So I walk into the room. I say, hey, I hear you're a member of the tribe. So he says to me, and I hear you want to put some boxes and straps on me. I said, can we do it? He said, I'm not that kind of a guy. I have to understand what I'm doing. So I said, you mind if I sit down? I sat down on the chair there, or the bed, whatever. And I said, ask what you want. He spent about a half hour. I'm not going to get it. It was very fascinating. The questions he asked were like basic questions. First of all, he asked me, if I put these on, what happens to me? You know? I said, what do you mean? He said, am I joining something? I said, no, you're in. It's too late. I said, if you put it on or not, I said, you're Jewish. He says, how Jewish am I? I said, you're just as Jewish as me. And just as Jewish as Moses. And just as Jewish as Abraham. And just as Jewish as King David. And just as Jewish as the Messiah we're waiting for. You're 100%. You're not 90, you're not 50, you're nothing. You're Jewish. He said, so what do you want me to put it on for? I said, because that's what Jews do. You put it on. That's it. So he wanted to know. He asked me a lot of questions. But the whole reason I'm telling the whole thing, there's a lot of more details. If you want, I'll go into the details later. But one of the questions he asked is, what's unique about the Jewish religion? How is it different? This is the first time he ever had a thought about Judaism. And I had to think quick. I said, look, I'm not a student of ecumenical religious practices. But I know, I know what most of us know about most religions. As far as I know, so correct me if you have a different view. I think that every religion consists of beliefs and acts. There's a spiritual side and there's an action side. And I believe that in every religion, I didn't study any religion in depth, but I believe that every religion would say that you have a spiritual, a physical acts that you do are there to transport you, to bring you to a state of a higher spiritual sensitivity. You're doing something in order to elevate your spiritual consciousness. I said, in the Jewish religion, doing the thing is the deepest thing that you can do. And he says, why? I said, I believe it's because it goes into why God created the entire world. And the world was created so that the physical world should be a manifestation of godliness, just like the higher world, which is a great achievement. Like I tried to explain to him the concept of Dira B'Tachtonim that you have in Chassidus, that the physical object becomes a home, it becomes an expression of godliness. So that the physical world is not something to bring you to a higher spirituality, and it's not a distraction, and it's not there as a temptation or a test, or to divert you away, and just to see if you're gonna. It's there so that physical world should become an expression of the deepest spirituality. I explained to him this idea, that's the point I wanted to say today. The end was, after about a half hour, he said, how long is it going to take? I said, what he wanted to know because he has to. The nurse is going to come and throw him all the different medicines, that he needed, in 10 minutes. I said, you can be done in 5 minutes. And I said, okay, I want to wash my hands. Washed his hands. And then, like a good doctor told you before what they're going to do. So I took out the film. I explained to him exactly what it is. I said, we're going to say a blessing to thank God for that. And then we're going to say 12 words in Hebrew. 6 from the Bible and 6 from the rabbi. And what are the 6 words? I said, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. He said, hey, wait a minute. He says, I got a problem. I have a problem with one God. He was a sincere guy. He says, I don't know if I can accept, if I can believe that. It's just one God. So I said, the part of you that's Jewish knows that there's one God. And that part is your essence. Everything else is part of your experience. And anyway, I said that Rashi in the Chumash says, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Today he's our God. We accept him as one. But when Mashiach comes, everyone said, and ultimately all of humankind will accept the one God. So that's who you are communing with. And by some nest, he accepted. And put on the tefillin, said the bracha, I explained it in English first. And at the end I said, do you know what you just did? He said, what? I said, you connected. I said, you connect. He said, to whom? I said, you connected across the centuries. I said, your great-great-grandfather would walk into this room. He wouldn't have a clue what that bass guitar is, but he'd know you're wearing tefillin. And you connected across the continents. A Jew in any country will know exactly what you did just now. I said, but that's not the biggest connection. The biggest connection is that you connected to your own innermost. I explained to him the idea of Yechidish B'Nefesh, that is the deepest part of the soul, and it manifests itself, and that's why you have Ma'aseh Mitzvah. Anyway, so let's come back to the story of Hanukkah, to the story of Yaakov with the Malach. So he says, Pachim Ktanim is not just a little aside. It's not just a little thing. What did Yaakov go back for? Pachim Ktanim. Everyone knows that. Is it relevant what he went back for? Yes, it is. Because that's what the whole milchama of life is about. The milchama of life is, am I important or not? Are my actions relevant or not? Is there a way I can escape from something? I just this morning took a look. It's part of my own achlot. I just started Basi Lagani Tov Shinchof, the Maimah of 50 years ago, of 60 years ago. 60, isn't it? Tov Shinchof? Tov Shinchof? My arithmetic is not that great, but I think 1960 was 60 years ago. Look, I'm old enough without pushing me another 10 years forward. Anyway, so, and in the Maimah, the Rebbe says an interesting thing from the Kesef Shem Tov. He quotes all of the Rebbeim in the Maimorim of Basi Lagani. And he says that the Baal Shem Tov said that one of the gateways to sin is humility, anivus. Being humble can make you sin. How so? Because a person can say to themselves, what am I? My actions are nothing. It's just pachim ketanim. I'm basically doing the basics. I'm doing the mivtzoyim, or at least most of them, with myself, I mean. And then give me a little slack, let me have a couple of off moments, a couple of pachim ketanim over there. And that can lead a person to I don't remember the exact lashon, but it was a very heavy lashon that the Rebbe says. that in other words, having a healthy self-esteem, spiritual self-esteem, is relevant, is necessary, and not having it is dangerous. So Pachim Ketanim, Yaakov was fighting with the Malach. He was talking about nothing is irrelevant, and Esav is saying, come on, you want to be religious, be religious. No, you're a fanatic, Meshugana. Pachim Ketanim. Look at a couple new jobs. They'll be better, they'll be bigger. You're talking about, Yaakov was saying that God gave you physical objects, or maybe I could say also situations that you're in the physical world. And they're not irrelevant. There's nothing irrelevant in your life. That was what the argument was about. And there's a medrash called Seder Laderech. And the medrash says that the reward for Yaakov fighting a whole night, a battle which continues till Mashiach, it says. The reward for that was that many centuries later, when his children begged Hashem to be able to find Pach Shemen, that Pach Shemen that was found for Hanukkah was the reward for the Pachim Ketanim. Because the story of Hanukkah, the Greeks, it says, Poshtu Yodam b'mamoinam u'bibnoiseihem. They stretched out their hands in their property, in their money, and in their daughters. So what's the money? Because that was what the Greeks were also saying. You have a spiritual type of a life, and the little details, the Pachim Ketanim, are not relevant. And that's why there's a minhag to give Hanukkah geld. It's to be mechanech a child to know to spend money responsibly, to relate to the physical world in a responsible way. And that's the story of Hey Teves. Story of Hey Teves, and the Rebbe told the stories about the Rebbeim and how the property of the Rebbe was imbued with a special kedusha and a special, just as much as every one of us is. So how much more so a tzaddik, how much more so a nosi, that what he had was necessary to fulfill his job in the world, which is to bring the Shekhinah out within the whole generation, within every person and within every object. And that's why it's Nitzchias Hanasiyas. That's why it's talking about the eternity of it, because it's years after the Frierdiker Rebbe passed on in the physical sense. But that makes no difference. And that deep connectivity on the spiritual level is not merely spiritual. It's there in the physical Olam Haba in a stronger, more active, more luminous, more powerful way than it ever was before. And that's what's telling us, and it's a geula, to be aware of that, to have a consciousness of that, of the nitzchis, of the importance of the gashmizdike world, of the physical world, is not irrelevant. And what the Rebbe taught us, and what the Rebbe teaches us, and what the Rebbe shows us the way in an extremely, extremely spiritually dark time. It's a time with, as dark as it is, elsewhere the Rebbe explains that parallel to the greatest darkness, there's also the greatest light and the greatest opportunity, which you can see in all the different ways of connecting to Hashem in today's world. So, but that's a darkness, which has the power for a light which is even stronger than the light of the Beis Hamikdash. It's 8 instead of the 7. And so, by thinking about, so I think Hanukkah, there's your Teskistlu, and then there's Hanukkah. These are all hachonis to Hey Teves, to let us appreciate how important I am and how important my machshavos are and how important my words are and how important my actions are and how important how I use my five senses is, and how important it is not to think, okay, I got 10 minutes off now. I'm switching off now. Be back. We're just turning off, and we'll reconnect a little later. Pachim ketanim of big things, and thinking that I'm small. The Rebbe taught every one of us in this generation that we should have Goin Yaakov. Proud, forthright. Ashereinu ma'atov chalkeinu. The Hasidim used to say a word. We say in the davening, Ashereinu ma'atov chalkeinu, ma'noim goreleinu, ma'yofa yisheseinu. 4 stages. How happy are we? How good is our portion? How good is ma'noim goreleinu? How pleasant is our lot? And how beautiful is our inheritance. So Chassidim used to say, Ashereinu, that we're Jews and not Goyim. Ashereinu, happy are we that we're Jewish people. The non-Jewish, they're also created in God's image. They have a purpose. But thank God I'm a Jew. Ma'atoiv chalkeinu, that we're Chassidim and not Misnagdim. Misnagdim are also, they're Jewish and they're Shleimim and they're good people and everything else. But thank God we're Chassidim. Ma'anoim goreleinu, how pleasant is our lot that we're Chabad Chassidim. We're not just connected to the Baal Shem Tov, we're connected to the Alter Rebbe, a Torah of Chassidus which you can, in this boinin, you can internalize, reflect. It involves your totality. Thank God, we're Chabad Chassidim. U'ma'yofa Yerushaseinu, how beautiful is our inheritance that we are this Rebbe's Chassidim, this generation of Chabad. That's what we always, Chassidim did in other generations, but in this generation we said it. And I believe that there's a 5th Ashreinu today. And that is that we are in the generation of the great darkness of after Gimel Tammuz. Which means there's a much greater challenge, but concomitant with that is a very powerful empowerment and being trusted and being given the ability to be able to relate to the Rebbe on a deeper, panimizdike, atzmizdike, in our essence, to be able to relate to the Rebbe. And to be able to understand the guidance he gave and the vision that he shared and continues to empower us to fulfill it into this generation, which is the generation that has to bring the last stage to bring Mashiach. And anyone with any objective eyes, plenty of problems from without, from within, we know it. But don't let that blind us to the fact that the pieces are falling into, you see, it's happening. It's happening in a small level, it's happening in a wider level, and we should really be saying Ashereinu and the Eibusher Zal Helfen, that we should see the ultimate Didan Notzach, and be able to see the Hazgalos of Mashiach Tzidkeinu B'Kodesh Mamish. Amen. I want to say that's at the end of the speeches. Maybe a mice or two later on, but I'd like interactive people to say something or ask a question, whatever it happens to be. L'chaim, l'chaim and anigin.
I have a question here.
Yes? Can we sing a song first?
Yeah.
Thank you. They're starting it anyway. There's not... Manoyim Geiroleinu Yafa Yerushaseinu Ay 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 that ay 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 Ashreinu Matom Chalkeinu Umanoyim Goyroleinu Umayofa Yofa Yofa Ashreinu Matom Chalkeinu Umanoyim Goyroleinu Uma Yafa, 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 Yerushalayim. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. Okay, L'chaim first. That's right. That's how you start it. That's the first word of every question is L'chaim.
I heard it said recently there'll come a day that in Hertz Israel there'll be elections and no government. If it happens 3 times, Zunka, the Mashiach has to come. I want to ask you, what do you think about that?
That's a very easy question. I'll just repeat the question. This gentleman heard a nevuah. I don't know which Navi said it.
Kadari.
Right. That you heard of a prophecy that in Israel there will be 3 elections with no government, the Mashiach has to come. So I want to tell you something. Mashiach is going to come even if there are no elections. Mashiach is not dependent on elections. And signs that Mashiach is coming are legion all
But
over.
isn't that a great sign? No government?
I don't have a relevant view on that. That's something I have no power over. I have a power over what I'm going to do tomorrow morning. I have a power over what I'm going to think tonight. I have a power over the way I'm going to relate to other people. And Mashiach, I promise you, faithfully, that he's going to come, even if there's no election. Or even if there is an election with a government, or a government without an election, whatever combination you want.
I have no doubt, but
all governments might stop, because there's nowhere in the Torah where it says that a government is needed.
If the government stops, that's what I'm saying.
All governments in the whole world could stop. But Mashiach is going to come. That's for sure. They tell a story about Yoel Khan. Many years ago, about 50 years ago, he was standing at a bus stop and waiting, it was cold, and there was a Yid there. He doesn't know who this Rabbi. He said, waiting for the bus is like waiting for Mashiach. So Rabbi Khan says to him, it's not. He says, why not? He said, because the bus might never come. It's not written that the bus has to come, but Mashiach is definitely going to come.
Yeah.
So the man said, you must be a Lubavitch. Yes. Chaim Zohar, Chaim.
My question is, you are living in London, in England. In Europe, in the last decade, there was a lot of anti-Semitism. This is not news. In America, it's kind of new. What do you think about it? What to do with it?
The question was, you're living in England, so you're used to anti-Semitism. But we're in America, and we're getting pretty frightened about it. So I want to tell you two stories. Story number one. Story number one happened. I was in Russia in the summer of Tavshin Mem Vav, 1986. I visited Riga. Among things that happened there, I was in the shul. In the afternoon, the Gabbai was there. The Gabbai was a government employee, a Jewish man, and we spoke in Yiddish. And he let me go into the library. That's the whole story there. He let me take 18 Sfarim, which some were very useful for the Jews there, the groups that were learning, and some were special, like a Tanya printed in the Alter Rebbe's lifetime. I took that for the Rebbe, how they got them out, everything else. I don't want to get a court case here against me. Anyway, so then the Gabbai said, I live in England. He said, England? How could you bear the anti-Semitism there? So I said, what's anti-Semitism? He says, I'm reading in the paper, in the Pravda, in their paper, they reprinted from a special feature on the Sunday Telegraph of England. It's a big, serious paper. And they had an article on which was attacking cemeteries and toppling over tombstones that had happened. But the Russians made into a 5-10 page talk about how terrible things are in England. So I said to him two things. I said, I haven't encountered, I meet every day all kinds of people. I haven't really encountered serious anti-Semitism, but let me ask you a question. Is there any anti-Semitism in this country, in Russia? He said, none. Just like that. He said, ganz nicht. He spoke Yiddish. He says, "Me weiß nicht, was tut sich bei jenem in Hertz." And he says, you don't know what the other person is thinking, but the government, our government, doesn't allow it. So it's a lot of it has to do that's one story. The other, I don't want to belittle it, because there were some very, very serious things here in recent days and even today itself. You have to find a way, but you have to see it in proportion. That's not how you're going to define your being here. Here we're sitting here openly. Everyone's going every day with beards, with the she wear yarmulke or not. We're in a neighborhood with thousands of Muslims where I live, Stamford Hill. Everyone knows that there's about 40,000 Jews, but there's also a lot of Turks and Pakistanis and Africans. It's an ethnic neighborhood. Tell you a story about the Frierdiker Rebbe. Two Hasidim came from Odessa. Odessa was known as like a modern city in Russia of old, 100 years ago. People went there when they wanted to, chill. That's they're putting it in an understated way. And the Frierdiker Rebbe asked, and they were there in the room together, and the Frierdiker asked the first one, when he had his Yechidus, how are things in Odessa? Well, maybe they weren't in the room together. He was in with the Rebbe. How are things in Odessa? So he said, look, there's shuls there, there's shtiblach, there's minyanim, people learn Chassidus, people daven. He said a lot of beautiful things about Odessa, and the Frierdiker Rebbe gave him a donation towards his expenses, or I don't know for what. He told his friend what had happened, and his friend said, I'm going to tell him the truth. And then he went in when his turn came, and the Rebbe, the Ayatz, asked him, what's happening in Odessa? What's happening in Odessa? And he says, unfortunate, so many people are flying out, and the theaters are busy, and this, and that. He started telling him all of the other things that are happening. And the Frierdiker Rebbe said, thank you for the report. And the Yechidus was over. So the man told the Frierdiker Rebbe, my friend from Odessa was here, and you gave him 10 rubles or whatever you gave him. And why didn't you give me anything? So the Frierdiker Rebbe said, I know what's happening in Odessa. I wanted to know which Odessa you live in. So we have to, there's things that are in my control. There are things that I can change. There's things that are my job, and that I can do. And there are things which are not in my power. Then that's not my birurim. These are very, very important things, but I have to think local. And what can I do here in this community? What can I do in my society, in my family, and in myself? That's where we should be focused. Our problem, again, chas v'chalila, especially it's raw. It's still very raw. And we pray that's not going to happen again. Here and in England, there's plenty of manifestations. It's not a new thing. It's just that today, the media publicizes it around the whole world almost before it happened. That's the thing which happens today. And together with that is the Rahman al-Islam, there's a thing called copycat effect. People see it happen, so they decide they want that 5 minutes of fame, and crazy mishugoyim, or wicked, terrible people. And, we have to work out a way to deal with it. The mitzvah is so often that because of mamash we should find a way to deal with it. But our focus as chassidim, and it comes like a Hey Teves, a Yud Shvat, special occasion, or even not a special occasion, is we have to take it like a little bit closer to home. How can I enhance things over here? Somebody asked me in London, a businessman, a firm guy, and he wondered if she wears yarmulke or not. He said, it's not a couple of years ago, when people started getting frightened. He said, he goes to the West End of London, there's streets in the center of London where the signs on the shop is in Arabic. He says, and I feel like very, very threatened when I go. Not that anything ever happened to him. So I said, wherever you go, just smile and say good morning to people. That's all. Not, you become the person who's going to spread goodness. That's something you have control over. Any other questions? That's it. Okay. What? About?
Hey Teves.
About Hey Teves. What about it? Go, come on. Maybe you say a few words. Zero. I'll tell you a story about Hey Teves. I'll tell you a story about Hey Teves. On Hey Teves, which is the Yud Tes Kislev of our generation. It's just tomorrow night. And a special aura came into this world. And I say that this is not only, it is, but it's not only the Hageshim of Chassidim. It's something which was validated and expressed by the Rebbe himself on certain levels. A lot of very poignant, very painful parts of it, but still big Yiluyim. The Mesiras Nefesh of the Rebbetzin, which the Rebbe compared to the Mesiras Nefesh of the Rebbetzin, the Devoid Aleya in the time of the Alter Rebbe. And when Hey Teves came about, there was a tremendous, powerful aura. The Rebbe said a sicha every day. It was like Sheva Brachos. Every single day, there was something special. Every day, at Mincha Ma'ariv, the Rebbe said something. Hey, on Vav Teves, the next day, the Rebbe said, tomorrow is Zayin Teves, and I'm going to the Ohel. And it's an Eis Ratzon. It's an auspicious moment. And anybody can ask for whatever they want. And it was a time when the technology of fax machines was not that widespread. You know what a fax is? Today's generation doesn't know what a fax is. I was teaching a class and I told them a story about a fax. I said, anyone know what a fax is? This 16-year-old kid. And somebody raised her hand and she says, it's an old-fashioned WhatsApp. And they define it. Anyway, but people all over the world, of all groups, the Rebbe went with about 15 gigantic New York shopping bags, packed in, each one, probably with thousands, or certainly with many hundreds of requests, of letters. Wow. Not all from Chabad, probably not even the majority from Chabad. In France, they didn't have enough. There were so many people, and they went to Air France, who got a lot of business from them, people flying to New York, and they gave them the fax machines to their at the service, a number of fax machines to send them. I remember in London, we heard the sikh. It was the middle of the night, and we went to the mikveh, and we went to someone's house at about 5 o'clock in the morning, and he almost threw a pail of water on us. He didn't have a fax machine either, but he had the key to Lubavitch house, where there was a fax machine. And Rabbi Sudak Olav Shalom, our shaliach in London, he was asked by the whole Kehillah to go, and he went with a gigantic suitcase, at least one suitcase, filled to the brim only with tzedlach. Came from all over the world, and we saw nisim giluyim. I know personally of a few of them, including one person who disappeared. And it was already about 12 years that person had disappeared. And the government was now giving his wife a widow's pension, just starting to give widow's pension. They accepted it. The proof, it was circumstantial evidence, somebody saw this in the river, whatever it was. I don't go into different details. And somebody told his son, who was a teenager, he was about 20 years old maybe, a young guy, that the Rebbe said it's an Eis Ratzon. He said, I'm going to try it out. And he wrote one line to the Rebbe. I want my father to come back. In fact, they were sent it with Rabbi Sudak, that's settled. And 1 week later, that man was back home. And the Hostalshelus, there was actually what came to, I don't go into the details of the story, but it happened then, right away, immediately. But until it became known that he was discovered, it took, another week. Because it had to do with they didn't have as sophisticated computers as they have today. To be able to identify this person, going in a false identity, and there was a reconciliation, That's the one story, and I know personally several others. But I heard from somebody. I went in Australia. There's a shaliach. And the shaliach's wife is a balas tshuva, a very special woman. And her parents, very special people, but totally secular lifestyle. At least at that time. And any time the son-in-law asked his father-in-law, who came from a family of survivors of Auschwitz, and he wanted nothing, zero to do with the religion. He was Jewish, very Jewish, but nothing to do with the religion. And any time he asked him to put on film or something like that, he'd say Auschwitz. That was his answer. Finished, one word. And then the Rebbe said, right, and ask for whatever you want. And if you can't get it to the oil, here's Australia, it wasn't realistic, maybe they have no fax machine. The Rebbe said you go to the cave of a Guta Yid, of a tzaddik, of a leader, a Jewish leader. And all the great people will be connected. So he went to his father-in-law, or she went to the father, I forgot the details, and told him, you can ask for whatever you want, do what they want him to at least join this thing. And the end is, the father said, look, if you want to write to me, you could write. He said, what do you want? He says, 5 o'clock tomorrow morning, I'm going on a fishing trip. I want to get a good catch. That's what I want. That's what he said. That's Emes HaMaisa. That's all. He wouldn't say anything more. So they went, and they wrote a settle for him. My father, such and such, Ben, such and such, asking for a bracha, have a good catch when he goes fishing tomorrow morning. At 5 with the latest. Then, about 7:30 in the morning, there's a knock on the door, the father is there. And the daughter says, what happened? He says, you'll never believe it. I went out, and going fishing. I went with my friend, who I always go with. And every minute I'm catching a fish. And my friend was in the same boat, so in the same area of that river, and he got nothing. And I saw he was getting a little bit jealous. So I said, you want to change places? He said, that's a good idea. And they changed places, and he still kept on getting. Fishes, and the friend got nothing. And at some stage, there was a big shipping vessel. It was nearby, it was dangerous, coming there. And they called out from the ship, we're having a very terrible day today. What happened there? And they said, somebody helping you up there. That's what the Goyim told him. And they said, he says, like, my van is outside and it's full of fish. So you can take a couple, have it for supper tonight. That's the Meiser. And then he started, as a result of that, he started doing something he had not done ever, or certainly not for many years, that's to go to shul occasionally. And one day he goes into the shul, and he hears two kids who didn't know, one of them knew who he was and one didn't. And the kid, who's that guy? And he overhears the kid saying, that's the man that was able to ask for anything, and he asked for fish. So, what am I saying? We got to know what to ask for also. We've got to know what to you say. What about the thing of Hey Teves is, it's a tremendously happy day because it was the exoneration of the nitzchius of the nesius of the Rebbe. It means that we have a Rebbe. It means that we're on track. It means that it's in our hands. It means that we should avoid humility, which will somehow diminish our self-esteem and make us question whether we can really do it or not on a personal level and on a national level. To be able to be upbeat and to be able to look forward. So it's a very happy day. But the biggest danger is that we become self-satisfied and it becomes just a celebration without due concern that we should use the koiches, that the special energies that are released and that are represented on that day and in those days, this next week, that we should make sure to use it in the best possible way for what's really important. And what's really important? Everything. Pachim ketanim. Everything's important. But to see how everything is important because it's important by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and it's important how it's important by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's what the Rebbe is teaching us. That's in every single line of every single sikha and every single maimah. L'chaim, l'chaim.
I'll ask the question. Really. Obviously in our system we're raising children. Chinuch al Taras HaKodesh. That basically we raise them with a sense of bitachon, some struggle with that question. At the end of the day, you see the reality. Is it so? Pashut, a lot of children, you're putting a child through a system, and you go through chinuch, and it's you see later there's parnasa problems and other issues. How does one deal with this in a very healthy way? It's something on a lot of people's mind, I know.
Yeah, I hear the question. The problems you mean are material problems, but not spiritual. The question was, there's a question about chinuch system, and I think you're talking about materially, adequately preparing our children prepared to cope adequately with the material demands of life in the world today. Is that a fair paraphrase? I don't know the answer. I'll tell you something. First of all, Chicago is a city with a very enviable chinuch system. And I have grandchildren, I mentioned this before, in the schools. Right? I have grandchildren in the system and graduates. And B'li Ayin Hora, every one of them got a tremendous benefit here. Sometimes you're in a place, and I'm in the field, and I travel to many other places. And where I go, I try, if I have a choice, even though it's less lucrative, but I visit chinuch moedas just to get a taste, a sense of it, because a lot of people talk to me. They're traveling, they're moving, what should they do, etc., etc. And therefore, I'm reluctant to say anything that has to do with chinuch over here, because I believe that there's a good system, and you have a mixed shvachim, a couple of these leaders here, right, sitting at this table, who have built up a system which is based on true, sincere Yiras Shamayim and true, obviously, concern for the individual pupils. That's not to say that I don't know any challenges and things, but I'm sure there are, because that's what life is about. A parent once came to me, and the parent was actually a former pupil, because I'm a headmaster in the school for 44 years. So she came to me like 20 years later, let's say, 25 years later. Which means about 20 years ago, 15 years ago. And her daughters were approaching teenage and coming into the school. And we were talking to Stamazay, and they saw some people who maybe we were still working on in the school. And she said, Rabbi Lew, can you give me a guarantee? My daughter's in your school. Can you give me a guarantee that my daughters will not be like such, without saying any names, without such elements? What should I have told her?
From Chicago.
I'll tell you what I told her. He said, right to the Rebbe. I heard, that's a given. That's a given. But the Rebbe, she that wasn't her question. She didn't ask me what should I do. She said, will you give me a guarantee? That's my question. What's the answer? Will I give her a guarantee? What's the answer?
No.
Right to the Rebbe, that's called cop-out.
He should give the guarantee.
She should give the guarantee.
What the father?
What's
your guarantee worth?
It was the mother who came to me. Okay.
Guarantee worth?
Pardon?
How much is your guarantee worth?
If I would have answered, then that would be a good test to see how much my guarantee is worth. I'll tell you what I answered. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know. I had to answer if I'm prepared to give a guarantee. Now I want to tell you that family and those kids who I knew, if there's anyone I would give a guarantee on, it would be them. Because I knew they were really good, the boys, the girls, the whole family. But I didn't say that because it wouldn't have been true. It wouldn't be true. I said, Chana, I cannot give you any guarantees. Because in any generation, especially today, there's no guarantees. But I can give you a guarantee. I can give you a guarantee that if your child will get caught up with foolish decisions or somehow or another start losing their way, I can give you a guarantee how you can help them work through their situation. And that is by working on your relationship with your child. It doesn't mean you're not going to have, because we have ourselves issues. Everybody has issues. That's why we have a Hey Teves. That's why the Eibishter created Schav. That's why you get a reward, because you have to work for it. So there's no guarantee to say if she's not, this is going to happen, it's not going to happen. There's so many different factors in life, so many unknowns besides all the knowns which I don't know, but they are known by somebody. I said I can give you a guarantee. I mean, Baruch Hashem, these students are married, fathers, there were no surprises there. There were no surprises. But that's not the point. Even that family, I wouldn't give a guarantee because there are no guarantees. Because that's not how it works. What I tell parents, I had once a mother, it's a woman from the Crown Heights, I never ever met her, knowingly. Somebody, a professional, but we connected, somehow they gave her my name, email. She had a specific personal question. I consulted other people. It needed, not negate the actual question, but we got talking sometimes on the phone. And it moved over to the question about her kids. They were little kids. And they fight, and they this. And I said, what do you do when they come home from kindergarten, from school, whatever it is? And you're home with your kids. She's on the phone. I said, turn off your phone from 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock. I promise you, it's not a pikuach nefesh. You'll survive it. And this, and that, my escape, my this, my that. I said to her, if you are there to listen to your kids when they're 5 and 6, they'll come and talk to you when they're 15 and 16. It's communication, it's talking. V'higadato levincha. The Rebbe says in a classical, foundational sikha, the Yud Aleph Nis, I think it was Membeis, about chinuch, and the Rebbe sums it up in 2 rules. One is v'higadato levincha. Talk! Converse, not order them around and this and that and, formal types of things. Talk with them. Just have a relationship. Talk with them. And they might have problems. And that's part of life. And part of life, and part of chinuch, and part of parenting is teaching a child how to be able to cope and how to be able to rise above and how to be able to transform and how to become even better as a result of having had to struggle to get where you are. And the second thing is being a dugma chaya, a living example. Don't send mixed messages to your kids. It's anyway. I forgot how I ever got onto this whole thing. Oh, but this question that Rabbi Hertz asked was, "Are we?" So therefore, I'm not going to put over here in Chicago because I have the highest regard for the entire chinuch system in this. For anything I've seen, I've been here a few times, more than a lot of other places, more than other people, and it's a very good, dynamic. I don't know, maybe it's imperfect. Everything in the world is imperfect, but it's people who are sincerely working with the kids that they are entrusted with. But you're asking a different question, I think. The question is, are these children equipped for life in the 21st century to be able to make it economically? I don't know the answer to that question. And I don't know if it's possible to equip children. Do you know how many university graduates are on the dole, are unemployed? Do you know that 85% of the graduates who are employed are not employed in the field of what they studied? It's because they studied and they developed their mind and they're able to adapt. That's the name of the game in the 21st century. It's adaptability. Because you don't know the world that your children are going to have a parnasa in. Your kid is 15 years old. You don't know what's going to be when that kid is 25. You have no idea of what the world's going to look like. You ever hear of Uber? Whoever heard of Uber? Who didn't hear of Uber? You ever hear of WhatsApp? Did you ever hear of ordering a ticket online and not calling up a travel agent? 10 years ago, none of those things happened. It didn't happen. You don't know the different things and the different opportunities that will be there. The people have to. If someone wants to learn a trade, has to learn it. They're equipped. I know somebody that's from years and years ago, and I know it was a boy who was in the system and was unfortunately lost a little bit. And his parents came to me, and they said he feels bad because he didn't do the various government exams in school. But he had a really good chinuch. So in England they have two levels of exams. There's what's called GCSE, General Certificate of Secondary Education, and there's a thing called A levels, Advanced Level, which is done usually 2 years later. Much higher level, the higher level. And they said if my kid does it, they needed a school because at that time, today it's changed already, but at that time there was a tremendous emphasis on what's called coursework. So it wasn't too much. The exam was maybe 50%, certainly not more. And it was coursework means you had to show work and show how you worked on it over 2 years. Did certain prescribed studies and essays, hula hula. But you needed a school. You needed someone. Anyway.
You needed someone.
Pardon? The end was, we allowed it. The kid did it and did extremely well in a few months. What I'm saying is, if somebody decides when they're 25 years old, which is what happened there, that they want to do something like this, they'll do it, and they'll do it 10 times better than anybody else. Because they learned Torah. Because their mind was sharpened. That's it.